meeting on Monday, July 20th, 2020. So it's 2020. And Shannon Crossbear is going to lead the meeting. So take it away, Shannon.
Okay. Let's just say that, so I want to step back. Jimmy Wedgmanito, Milkmistno, Mishmayanam, Nakishnika, Babagami, Sujitway, Play, Sodom, Honey in the way, Mom. So what I just did was gave you a traditional reading. I told you, first I asked the ancestors to look down upon me and help me to speak a good way. I told you who I was and where I was from, and I told you what my my clanship was. So that's kind of why I wanted to arrive here as my whole self, and in order to do that, it's important for me to, speak the language and to acknowledge that. So I'm First Nations, I'm Ojibwe and Irish. I live in northern Minnesota on the shores of Lake Superior. These are the homelands of the Ojibwe people, and wake up in the middle of the boreal forest. And so we're kind of gathered at the We team to really talk about the collaboration and about what's happening with the campaigns that we have that will lead us to moving from an I society to a we society. We'll talk a little bit more about that. But we want to welcome those folks that are new to the call. And what we did last week, and hopefully going forward, is really having an opportunity to kind of set the stage for ourselves. And so last week we talked about, words that will help guide us in our conversations that we have on Monday call. And I just want to repeat those words for people. So last week the words that were shared were sacred, present, unity, a we mentality, empathy, respectful of each other's time, assume good intent, hearing beyond listening, dignity, patience, perseverance, trust, holding our judgments lightly, resonance, brevity, recognizing time is precious, and allowing grace for each other.
Well, you missed a very important word in there.
Yes.
Fantastic.
Yes, well, as we think today, as we kind of, if there are words that you would add to that list, please share them, and we will put it on our ongoing document so that we have those as our guide as we continue to have dialogue and have these conversations. Yeah. So today we have a couple things that we actually would like to have happen. One is we want to make sure that we get to know the new people on the call and welcome them and hear their voices and to invite them into the we collaboration and finding where their voice and where their presence and where their activities may best benefit as we move forward. And then we want to hear a little bit from Angel about where the campaigns are at, some things that she wants to share with us, and of course Rick. And then kind of get an update from everybody about where they're at with their campaign. Any other kind of thoughts they want to share around kind of the presence, our presence in this world at this time, with all the things that are happening. Because we come to this work with our whole selves, and so all of that is affecting. So yeah. Rick, I know that you wanted to add some
thank you, Shannon, and welcome to everyone. There are a few things I want to mention before we get to our own updates. I do want to draw attention to the fact that John Lewis and C.T. Vivian have died over the last few days. They are both giants in the U.S. civil rights movement. I wanted to mention that. If you go, yeah. And by the way, I want to request that we mute ourselves if we're not speaking. And also, Shannon, I think, is going to be basically, it's almost like passing along a digital talking stick. As people are doing their comments and their updates and that kind of thing, if you have a comment, please raise your hand. Now you could do that digitally if you don't want to have your video on. But if you can put your video on, that would be great. But if you can't and you want to raise your hand, there is a way, I believe, to do that. Click something at the bottom there to raise your hand. If you click participants, I think you can raise your hand. So I just want to mention that. And getting back to that, so John Lewis and C.T. Vivian are both featured on Democracy Now!, which I recommend as something that kind of gives an overview of what's happening that is probably of interest to most or all the people on our team. If you go to democracynow.org, and today they devoted the whole show after the news headlines to John Lewis and C.T. Vivian, who have some very powerful stories about what they've done and how they contributed to civil rights movement. And of course that takes us to where we are now, where the effects of what I call the triple pandemic of racism, inequality, and COVID-19, those effects are happening as we speak. And of course they have been inflaming communities around the U.S. and around the world. And it's not resolved. And so I just heard today that in the U.S. alone, black and people of color-owned businesses are going out of business or have gone out of business since the pandemic started at a much higher rate. Of course, the whole thing is affecting everyone, but it's again at a much higher rate than the white-owned businesses in the U.S. And I think it's at the level of something like 41 or over 41% in the United States. And that number is just from February through April. And it's been increasing in May and June, and we're in July already, so it's a gigantic number. Just one more indication. So I just wanted to mention that I think it's important for us to continue to highlight this in our broadcasts, in our programs that we're doing now. And, that's one thing I talked over with Sue about the broadcast that we're doing for the Welcome to We show on Tuesday. So we are going to highlight that, as we talk about other things. But I think it's just important for us to talk about. Today is also the strike for Black Lives. It's taking place in the United States, and there are many, many organizations that have stepped up to be partners in that. And I just want to read off some of the names of them, just so you know. The Service Employees International Union in the U.S., the American Federation of Teachers, United Farm Workers, Communication Workers of the U.S., Coalition of Black Trade Unionists, the Movement for Black Lives, Poor People's Campaign, U.S. Youth Climate Strike Coalition, 350.org, Working Families Party, Greenpeace USA, the Sunrise Movement, Move On. I mean, it's a very, very long list are taking part in this. Sierra Club, Moms Rising, Code Pink, National Women's Law Center. Just to let you know, it's pretty. It's definitely progressive groups, but it's also mainstream groups that are taking part in this. So I thought it's important for us to know about that. In other news, there is exciting stuff for us on the horizon as we approach 11 days of global unity. And I think I'm going to spotlight myself. So we have, if people are talking and the video isn't on them, I'm gonna.
Yeah, actually, I called in. I don't know. I'm not on Zoom, but I'm just trying to figure out.
11 Days of Global Unity is coming up, and I think a lot of the folks on this call will be talking about that, like Angel and Peter, and others. But I just want to mention there are some interesting things coming up, and of course, Sue. There are some interesting things coming up. I had a great conversation with a guy named Jim Garrison, who used to do the State of the World Forum like 10, 15 years ago. And I had proposed to him that we collaborate on something that sort of reprises that idea. I'm not sure if it's going to be called that or not, but he's currently doing Ubiquity University and Humanity Rising. So he has agreed that we will do that, and we're both going to be looking to get the global leaders involved with that and interviewed. And that means he's going to ask Gorbachev.
Well, I'm going to sign off now and try to get on Zoom where I might be noticed, because I want to introduce the Be Fantastic movement to this group, and I'll tell you more about it in a bit.